Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology, and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner, and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
Hi, Ben. I'm good. Hello, everyone out there in STC land.
Yep, and it's our second go at using WebRTC today. We debuted it for our show last week and worked remarkably well, and looks like it's working remarkably well again, I would say.
I've got to say, I really, really like it.
Yeah, just ease of use. It's all good, so highly recommend it. Go check it out. Now, we're going to talk about aging today, and particularly the efforts that are being, I guess, brought to bear to, I don't know, combat it would be the way to say it, or maybe at the very least understand how it works. And Steve, you sent through that really interesting article about essentially where it's coming from the point of DNA repair being essential for cell vitality, etc., for cell survival and cancer prevention, etc. And that's what basically keeps us all functioning on a day-to-day basis. But as the years progress, the body's ability to keep that up deteriorates, and that's in effect what aging is. It's just your body's inability to keep up with that repair job. But obviously, given that it's DNA, and it can be, I guess, investigated at the cellular level. Scientists are always looking for ways to see if they can understand that process and potentially maybe even deal with it in some way. What was your understanding of what they're getting at in this particular case?
Well, it's interesting. Now, Ben, I'm not sure if it's still up, but we did a fist chat on this, I reckon, about 4 or 5 years ago. And this is actually the follow-up. So this story is pretty much the follow-up to that. And what's really, really interesting about it is that in the story we did back 4 or 5 years ago, we were reporting on the fact that there are a whole range of compounds that had been identified that could repair DNA. And as you just pointed out, it's the errors in DNA which occur naturally with time that cause aging.
Yeah.
So they've found these factors in wine, they've found them in foods, they've found them in cells. I think today this story largely focuses on NAD+, which is nicotinamide, adenine, deoxy, whatever it is.
No, we won't hold you to it. That's fine.
Don't hold me to it. Once again, it's not fake news. This is true. But all of these compounds now are coming into play. And basically scientists are working out how they can be added to our diets or the potential of a magic pill that will stop that aging process. And the other thing to remember about aging is that throughout 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, the aging process is definitely there, but it's not that great. It's once we start to hit 50 and 60 that all of these errors multiply. They become cumulative from the time that you were 20, and that's when the aging really increases rapidly. So if they can find ways or factors or substances that we can take, we can really stop that aging process, certainly with regards to wrinkling of skin, loss of hair, and a lot of the diseases as well that come with aging. Well, so this is very research.
Yeah, well, I think the point that we raised in that previous episode that we did was this could not necessarily lead to the immortality necessarily. It's more about providing the best quality of life for as long as possible. So instead of a sort of gradual decline, you could last for 100 years and be fighting fit, but then you might sort of tail off really quickly at the end with that sort of thing. And that could potentially make things more, I guess, palatable, particularly instead of looking at, maybe 10, 20, 30 years of decline, it could be, maybe just a year or two instead, and the rest of the time you're actually able to put it to more productive, sort of life worth living activities kind of thing.
Oh, exactly. These I get lead to situation where you get, for instance, immortality, as you're saying, it definitely will prolong our lifespans, particularly if it takes out some of the diseases of aging.
Yeah.
But there is the paradox here, which we've spoken about before, that is, perhaps a little bit scary, because cells that can replicate essentially eternally without collecting these mutations are typically cancer cells.
Yeah.
So that immortality thing, who knows what that really means in terms of cell biology if you look at it from that perspective. What you would hope, though, as you said, that this is a way now where we can start to make sure that we live happy, healthier lives for longer and live that way for as long as possible.
It's
the
interesting.
reality is that what you've got is eventually going to wear out. No matter how good these factors are, they're not going to stop the aging process. They're just going to slow it.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about what you just said there is this sort of catch-22 scenario where maybe the degradation in the cells is, in a way, like you said, if the cancer cells are just ones that can continually replicate and go out of control or whatever, and yet maybe that's also part of where the ability to keep cancer at bay, so to speak, might be part of that, in a real ironic sense, I guess.
Well, that's the evolutionary role. Pretty sure is the Hayflick limit is there to basically protect us from diseases like cancer, and it's when a cell can actually replicate basically for as long as it likes without accumulating any damage at that level. Then you have cancer. I mean, This is interesting. In some ways, I wouldn't necessarily draw a straight comparison, but in some ways, you might find that aging for humans has because of this, has a hard limit. Maybe a bit like the speed of light in physics. Yeah. It's not quite the same, but maybe we should think about it. So there are some studies out there. You can dig around and have a look for these that suggest that realistically, human lifespan maximised would probably finish at about 115, 120 years. It would hard to go much further.
Well, I guess then that leads to a more philosophical question, which I'm sure we covered in the other episode too, is do you actually want to live for so much longer, say beyond 120, but 150 years? Or indefinitely. Part of, I guess,
it's a good question, because I think that what happens at that point is saying that say you could optimize your aging with these factors, and you get to 115, 120. That would be a natural lifespan for a human. However, the technology probably does exist, or will exist, that will allow you theoretically immortality. So that's something to think about. And when that occurs, who would take it?
And there will be people that will take it, but then it's a question of if you're going to live forever, then there's no urgency to anything. So, and there's been plenty of movies about that, mainly vampire movies, I think, where they're moping around wondering what they're doing with their lives, apart from sucking people's blood. That is what gives you that urgency. Like if all right, so I've got roughly 100 years. I got to get on with things if I want to, do this or do that, or feel like I've achieved something. And it might get to a point that if you had such a long lifespan, you might just, hit cruise control and wonder what you're doing. Maybe for the first 40 years of your life, it's like adolescence or something. Who knows? It's kind of a weird concept to grasp, and it's not something we've had to deal with yet.
Well, look, you've really opened up a Pandora's box there, because the kind of weird thing is that I think with digital disruption, 40 and 50-year-olds are living like they're 20-year-olds today. and even though it's not real, cosmetic surgery allows you to kind of keep the clock at bay, even if your joints are all creaky. So it's a fine line, but if you can get down to the DNA level and solve the issue of aging there, then that really that changes everything as we know it. And you'll be right, maybe you spend your first 68 or 75 years or something just no one puts any pressure on you because you're just too young really to know what you want to do with life. And then once you turn 80, you spend those last 40 years working really hard at a career or something like that.
And it's probably worth pointing out too that all this aside, just the advances in medicine have in effect doubled, lifespans in a very short space of time. And, things could progress, like, if you got to 60 back in the day, you'd be considered ancient. But now, realistically, people are getting to 90, 95, 100, and in a couple of, beyond that in some cases as well. So, but that's very, and I guess this opens up a whole range of other issues around how does a society handle people that are alive for that much longer as well.
Well, that's right. And the question is will technology like this shift that aging point? Because, like realistically, 30 is the new 20, 40 is the new 30, 50 is the new 40, and so on. But you kind of run out at 70. I mean, 70 doesn't really become the new 60.
No.
Or maybe it does, but 90 doesn't really become the new 80. There doesn't seem to be a lot of difference there. So I think that's something that, factors like this and research into this field will radically change our society. And if the transformation of society we're going through now with globalization, if it does what it should do ethically, which is lift the living standards of everyone on the planet to a sustainable level and with equity, then you would assume that birth rates really with technology like this would drop way down everywhere.
Yeah, because what would be the need, I guess.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So very interesting what it could mean.
Absolutely. Well, just before we wrap up, I wanted to just mention the BBC One documentary that I've been watching, Inside the Human Body, which is a sort of has a nice little tie-in with this. Michael Mosley does a pretty good quirky job of explaining how everything works, and I think this type of documentary, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's 4 episodes and it covers a whole range of items in terms of how the body deals with things, starting from conception all the way to the end. And it's not necessarily doing anything, it's not doing like what we're talking about, the whiz-bang stuff. It's not covering what research into DNA to prevent aging or anything. It's more about just the basics of how everything works. But I think you can easily take for granted just how well the body does things and how intricate and complicated it is, and how it all just keeps working the way it does without you even thinking about it. And he says that quite a few times in the documentary. It's he'll say, your something or other will do this 80 million times a week, or your skin will be replaced completely once a month, and you don't even think about it. And that's something that I think needs to be highlighted as you need to sort of be amazed by that. I don't see how you couldn't be.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the saddest things about modern society is that people don't appreciate how amazing their own bodies are. They don't appreciate how amazing life is, very often. But also, just to take this a step further, that's what's amazing about us as sentient beings, is all this stuff is going on, and yet we tend to just think about ourselves. We think up here somewhere in between our ears, and we think about what we're doing, but we don't think about our bodies.
No.
Our bodies just kind of do whatever it is we're thinking. But our bodies are their own entity. But likewise, this shifts out. If you really understand, how amazing it is that a tree grows, that any plant grows, the natural cycles that occur on the planet, the seasons, all of those things. I think maybe if we live a little bit longer, healthier, happier lives, and we take more time to contemplate the sorts of things you're saying, like, about what actually makes us tick, what our physical nature is, rather than just the idea of living, forever, then I think maybe humans will be better off It's a very interesting question, but you're definitely right. People very often fail to see how amazing the human body is.
Well, I think overall that's a nice sort of way to finish up. I think we started off in a specific place, and I think we've rounded out the whole thing. So thanks again for that, Steve. It's a nice chat, and we'll definitely find that old episode that we did this to tie it in and post it this week, because it's always topical. People are always wanting to know the latest advances in this type of thing, and even just from a purely curiosity perspective, it's fascinating how it can be sort of investigated, manipulated if needed, and that it can be worked out as well.
It certainly is, and well, I'm sure we'll be talking more about this again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, Google+. Love to hear from you. We've got our photography on Instagram, so still trying to keep on that. We're actually going to be off for a little while, and I'll probably hopefully be posting more to Instagram, because I'll be doing a bit of traveling over the next little while. So we'll be back. Hopefully I'll have some stories to tell there. And if you think anyone's interested in these ongoing discussions that Steve and I have on a regular basis, feel free to send them to SciTechCulture.com, get them to subscribe to our channels, and everything will be great with the universe. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.